Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are, and welcome. I am Yulia Joja. I'm a senior fellow at the Middle East Institute's Frontier Europe Initiative, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all today to our event on U.S. strategic partnerships in the Black Sea. Apologies for the small delay. We are having a little bit of a delay because we are running late with with a previous event, so we're going to get right on and start. The Middle East Institute's Frontier Europe initiative launched in October 2019. So very new. Our program explores the Black Sea as a key region for transatlantic security. With today's event, that is part of our effort for Black Sea security and dialogue. We will look at the United States' presence in the Black Sea region through the lens of its strategic partners in that region in the security space, Georgia, Ukraine, and Romania. We are fortunate to be joined by each of these countries' ambassadors to the United States today, who will lend their perspectives and insights into the current affairs and current states of these strategic partnerships with the United States, the role of the United States in the Black Sea region, and what challenges and opportunities exist. First, I am delighted to welcome His Excellency David Bagratze, the Ambassador of the Republic of Georgia to the United States. Ambassador Bagratze has a long and distinguished career in diplomatic service. Since 1997, he has served in a number of senior official posts in Georgian public service. And prior to his appointment as ambassador to the United States, His Excellency served as the State Minister of Georgia for Euro-Atlantic integration. In that role, he was responsible for coordinating the Georgian government's work on implementing key instruments of integration to the European Union and NATO. Welcome, Ambassador Bagratze. It is also my pleasure to introduce His Excellency George Meyer, Ambassador of Romania to the United States, a post that he has held since 2015. Ambassador Meyer has held a number of postings, including State Secretary and Head of the Department for Euro-Atlantic Integration and Defense Policy within the Romanian Ministry of National Defense, senator in the Romanian parliament, and he has also served as the fourth director of Romanian intelligence, and he is also a professor at the National School of Political Studies and Public Administration in Bucharest. Finally, we are honored to have with us His Excellency Volodymyr Yelchenko, Ambassador of Ukraine to the United States since December 2019. Ambassador Yelchenko has a long and distinguished career in Ukraine's foreign service, including ambassadorships to the United Nations Security Council as permanent representative of Ukraine to the UN, as Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Ukraine to the Russian Federation. To read the full bios of today's distinguished speakers, please visit MEI's website. Welcome everyone again. I look forward to taking audience questions through Zoom's Q&A feature, which you can all find on your screens. For those calling in by phone or watching our panel on the live stream, you can ask questions by emailing events@mei.edu or tweeting us, that is at MEI Frontier. And if you have any technical issues, please email events@mei.edu. Feel free to ask a question at any time throughout the panel. I will be looking at all of your questions and will factor as many in as possible in the 1 hour discussion that we have. And with that, we will begin. I am going to start the discussion by giving the floor to each of our distinguished panelists for one round of opening remarks on the United States strategic partnership with their representative countries. Then we will go through a round of discussions regarding regional environments and how these strategic partnerships impact regional security in the Black Sea. And then we'll go through a round of two of questions that I will try to weave into the conversation from our participants. Let's start in no particular order, or maybe from the smallest to the biggest, with Ambassador Bagratze. Welcome, Ambassador, again. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Julia. It's a pleasure to join the audience in discussing which for us, for Georgia, is a critically important dimension, the strategic partnership with the United States. I think we will, I assume we will present generally how these strategic partnerships work for the specific countries that will define and that will describe the interest and strategic interest that the United States has towards the region and the security of that particular region. For Georgia, this strategic partnership has a key importance. The United States is defined by the Georgian foreign policy documents as a main strategic partner that Georgia has. And this strategic partnership has several dimensions. Definitely, we today will concentrate on defense and security cooperation that countries enjoy. And this transformation that the United States has helped Georgia to perform throughout since the regaining of independence and strengthen its defense and capabilities is critical for promoting our bilateral regional interests. Georgia is a recipient of U.S. assistance for the last 20 plus years for its defense and security cooperation. And this has transformed the country from a recipient of this assistance to a strong contributor to the international security. Today, Georgia is playing a strong role in the global security as the largest per capita contributor in resolute support mission in Afghanistan. But throughout the years, we have always stood together with our allies in defending peace and freedom. After that, in 2016, a very important memorandum on defense and security has been signed that has advanced our cooperation on this dimension. We are now enjoying Georgia Defense Readiness Program that covers Georgia's strengthening, the dimension of strengthening Georgia's resilience and defense capabilities. We are very actively cooperating in advancing Georgia's interoperability with NATO. You know that Georgia is a strong aspirant country with all the instruments at hand to advance to the membership. And these programs have advanced to the level that Georgia has become last year for the first time host of hosting and leader of the multinational exercises that were held in Georgia. Last year, we had 2,500 US troops that participated in one of several exercises that Georgia hosts. And Georgia has led these exercises for the first time with the NATO partners. Georgia, of course, faces a lot of challenges, and I assume at some point we will discuss these challenges that in the region, together with our partners and friends, we face coming from the Russian Federation. But I also want to take a moment also to reflect to another dimension, which I think is critically important for the security of the region, which is economic cooperation with the United States. Georgia plays well, in these times, we can see the increased interest coming from the United States. Even in the pandemic, the period of the global pandemic, the only country that investments from increased to Georgia was the United States. And these investments were directed to the key industries, key dimensions of Georgia's economy, which is infrastructural development and logistics. That shows the interest that the United States has towards the region, towards the place that Georgia is located, which is crossroad connecting largest economies. And without that component, it is impossible to discuss the securities. Georgia provides the very good competitive advantages, having the FTAs with most of the Eurasian countries, of course, very big business-friendly environment. But today, after the pandemic, we see a lot of discussion in considering the diversifying of supply chains. And in addition to that, this interest is also merged of the United States comes together with the EU interests of the connectivity. And here are the countries that play and should play a strong role in the connectivity when it comes to transport, digital, energy, etc. And that's where we play an important role. Georgia plays and projects the stability in the region despite the challenges that we face through the importance of the democratic development, which is another, I think, aspect of the security for the region and stability. And that is also something that US has invested a lot throughout the years, and we see the fruits that we can grasp from that has put Georgia at the level where we compare ourselves to the countries of the European Union. And through this, I think this partnership has demonstrates the transformational effect that US may have on the countries, but also it demonstrates the areas of the interest that United States have with its allies working together to advance our regional interests. I will stop here and be waiting for the discussions.
Thank you, Ambassador Bakradze. And with that, I will give the floor to Ambassador Meyer. Ambassador, Romania has acted as the United States' main ally for a while now in the Black Sea. It is a NATO and EU country. How do you see the strategic partnership with the United States that Romania has had now for 2 decades?
Thank you, Yulia, first of all, and thank you, audience, wherever you are. I think this is a timely debate. It's a complement, intellectual complement to the debates that are taking place now, and I'm happy for this in Washington, regarding the Black Sea area, regarding the challenges in this very complex region. I think this will add to those debates, and I'm also encouraged by your initiatives for the medium and the long term to have this aspect, the Black Sea, from many angles, point of reference in your initiatives and discussions. Indeed, I think it's important to make a few points. I'll be very brief because it's always more interesting to receive questions and try to answer them. Very brief points on the Romanian-American strategic partnership. It was initiated in 1997. It has grown substantially in quality and quantity over time. I think we've reached a culmination point now in this period with developments in all important areas of cooperation. Of course, defense and security, intelligence, but also economics and people-to-people relationship. Indeed, as you mentioned, it's one of the main strategic partnership for US in Central and Eastern Europe. It's an addition to stability and security in a very complicated area, not only the Black Sea, I would say, but also the Balkans, if we take into considerations developments over there. And it adds to a policy of predictability and of stability in this complicated, reiterate this again, area. The partnership has been proved on many occasions. There are many examples of intense cooperation between our two countries. Let's not forget that we contributed and we are contributing with troops, for example, in Afghanistan. We did that in Iraq. We have this extraordinary strategic project in common, which is the Aegis Ashore, deployed by US and Romania in Romania to cover in terms of the missile threat this part of Europe. We have conducted many common exercises together in the Black Sea and in the region. We have advanced interoperability between our armed forces, which is again an element that projects cooperation and also stability in this region. Even during this pandemic, our dialogue was systematic in terms of common assistance. America indeed assisted us with several logistical aspects during the pandemic, but also Romania has deployed through its Ministry for Defense a number of military doctors to assist in combating the pandemic over here. That shows a lot and demonstrates a lot the level of interaction between our two countries. Of course, the partnership establishes a framework for a constant strategic dialogue between our countries, and this relates also to developments in the region. And of course, we'll discuss further the complexity of the Black Sea region in terms of security, but suffice to say here that the dynamics in the region are constantly discussed in this framework of the partnership. The degradation of security and stability in the Black Sea area, of course, my colleague from Georgia, David, mentioned developments in this respect, especially after Crimea. Those are aspects that we're discussing constantly, analyzing the region and trying to frame common policies with the intention to counteract such dynamics. Also, our assistance towards our colleagues in Ukraine, in Moldova, which also forms a basis for this regional dialogue that we are conducting through this partnership with the US. I cannot end without mentioning the great development that was produced by the ministerial meeting, NATO ministerial meeting in Washington, focused on the Black Sea through our insistence on the strategic relevance of the region, supported strongly by US. We're working hard in order to implement those decisions that will generate, hopefully, a more significant deterrence and defense posture on the eastern flank of NATO, which is, in our opinion, and not only in our opinion, one of the most critical geographical, geopolitical, and political areas in terms of our interest for stability and security in this area. But again, thank you for this debate. I'm looking forward to questions and commentaries and open for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Meyer. And with that, I would like to turn to His Excellency Ambassador Yelchenko. Ambassador, Ukraine is one of the bigger countries in the region, yet faces by far the most serious threat in terms of security and has been doing so over the last 5 years. Yet, particularly under the Trump administration, the United States has stepped up in terms of support. How, in your view, is the United States strategic partnership with Ukraine helping Ukraine in the security threats that it is facing at the moment?
Thank you very much, Julia, for bringing us together for such an important discussion. First of all, let me mention that the Black Sea sits at a very important crossroads between Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Oil and gas pipelines run along the bottom of the sea. Hundreds of ships cross it daily, moving people and goods. For centuries, the Black Sea has been fought over by some of the world's major empires. Throughout history, it has proven to be one of the most geopolitical and economically important locations in the broader Eurasian region. Even for a country located thousands of miles away, like the United States, the Black Sea is very important. For the US, in my opinion, its strategic importance is primarily derived from two issues. The first is America's treaty obligations under NATO. 3 of the 6 Black Sea countries, Turkey, Bulgaria, and Romania, are in NATO. Another 2 countries, Ukraine and Georgia, participate in NATO's Partnership for Peace program and are NATO's enhanced opportunity partners. These countries are particularly important because they demonstrate the political will to deploy troops in support of NATO operations. And my colleague David already mentioned this. Just to give you an example in figures, Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania, Ukraine, and Georgia collectively contribute 1/3 of all European forces serving in NATO's Resolute Support Mission in Afghanistan. And of course, Georgia is number one in that sense. Secondly, one of America's greatest geopolitical adversaries, Russia, depends on the Black Sea region for energy, trade, security, and economic reasons. For Russia, its domination in the Black Sea region has always been considered a matter of national survival. I don't have to mention, of course, several Russian-Turkish wars, which happened in the past. And of course, that was the main reason behind the decision to take over Crimea and earlier to create the situation in the Georgian region of Abkhazia, which we are still facing. Russia's Black Sea ports, as the country's only warm water ports, have always served its economic interests. Russia also uses its Black Sea military bases, many of which are located on the occupied Crimean Peninsula, to stage military operations further afield, such as Syria and recently and secretly Libya. At the heart of Russia's presence in the Black Sea, of course, currently is its illegal occupation of Crimea. Russia's annexation of Crimea is an unprecedented act of aggression in the 21st century. It was the first time that borders in Europe had been changed by military force since 1945. Crucially for Moscow, the annexation has de facto cut Ukraine's coastline in half and has essentially turned the Black Sea into a Russian-controlled lake. Soon after Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the United States, along with several other NATO members, stepped up its presence in the Black Sea. Just recently, USS Porter entered the Black Sea, and it will be visiting also the Ukrainian naval bases. This kind of presence is really important as it demonstrates that the United States care about Ukraine and its allies and partners. Another important thing the US is undertaking is strengthening Ukrainian Navy. I think this is also due to the events of November 25, 2018, when 3 Ukrainian Navy vessels with the crews were captured by Russians. Few Ukrainian crew members were injured. This situation indicated that Ukraine was vulnerable in the sea. Russia was trying to dominate in the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, and to prove it, it denied the legitimate right of the Ukrainian vessels to freely navigate to one of the Ukrainian ports through the Kerch Strait, which belonged to Ukraine. This situation attracted international attention and led to realizing that balance of forces was not in favor of Ukraine. Combined with the efforts of former Navy commander Admiral Voronchenko, who made a few trips to the US and masterminded the naval strategy of Ukraine, this drew a lot of the US attention to the situation in the Black Sea region. It became obvious that strengthening Ukrainian Navy, which should be able to patrol its waters, demonstrate military presence, and, let's say, show muscle, should become a key goal. Last October, we received from the United States 2 Island-class patrol boats, and we are expecting more to come. We took note of the recent media reports indicating that the US is providing Mark VI patrol boats to Ukraine. I'm really happy that this is happening, and I can only add that Ukraine has plans to purchase more patrol boats from the United States. This will allow us to control littoral waters and demonstrate presence in the Black Sea, avoid capturing by Russia and other gas deposits belonging to Ukraine in the Black Sea. These boats will be duly equipped and will perfectly fit into the concept of mosquito fleet, the idea of many smaller boats which cannot be easily targeted, but which could bring the damage equal to the coming from the bigger ships. I can only praise the support of our US partners, which demonstrates strategic partnership between our two nations. Another important thing that is demonstrating Ukraine-US strategic partnership in the Black Sea is the annual Sea Breeze exercise. As part of Sea Breeze, the US Navy deploys a contingent of Marines, Navy divers, maritime patrol aircraft. The exercise in the Black Sea serves as a venue to work side by side with allies and partners to deter aggression and enhance our ability to work together. These are the points to demonstrate that Ukraine and US are strategic partners in the Black Sea. We cooperate, we think how to improve our cooperation for the benefit of the two nations and for the benefit of regional security. I think that more ideas we're discussing will come through very soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Yelchenko. And as we turn to questions from our audience, I want to switch a little bit the debate to the discussion to what is happening in the Black Sea in terms of the security environment in the greater picture of contributions of NATO and in the greater picture of transatlantic security. Ambassador Yelchenko mentioned that Black Sea countries still contribute over a third of troops in Afghanistan, despite the security volatility in our region in the Black Sea. And at the same time, we see major troop movements in Europe that can affect also Black Sea security, as we are looking after 2014 from Afghanistan to the annexation of Crimea. We have all had to switch around NATO from expeditionary warfare to territorial defense. And over the last few months, we've had news of troop withdrawals from Germany, of the United States, troops being moved to Poland. That is a focus on the Baltic Sea as part of the eastern flank. So the question that I would like to ask our panelists today is how they see the security environment and in the Black Sea specifically being affected by these major changes over the last few years. Ambassador Bagratze, there was also a question that I would like to weave in regarding the GDRP, that is the Georgia Defense Readiness Plan, that is set to end at the end of 2021. How do you see the security environment in the Black Sea, and how do you see Georgia's role in this security environment?
Thank you very much. Very important issues were raised, discussed, and definitely the security environment is difficult given the role of some Black Sea states, especially Russia, that it has played over the years in destabilizing the countries like Georgia in 2008 and even before that in Ukraine starting 2014, and we faced that, but without stability and security in the Black Sea, I think that there is no Europe or NATO security and stability able. So therefore, we see the importance of the eastern flank that you have just mentioned, Julia. The importance of the eastern flank that was initiated in the 2016 Warsaw Summit that has enhanced the forward presence on the eastern flank of the alliance. That includes, of course, Poland and Baltic states, but also this forward presence tailored to the southeast of the alliance territory and Black Sea region is also important. And therefore, we as a country which is close to the alliance and very strong aspiring partner, we have initiated ourselves several times on the NATO level the discussion on the Black Sea security, and we have expressed a very strong desire to participate in this in the future arrangements. And as you know, at the Brussels summit in 2019, the alliance has based on Georgia's proposal, has started to announce the concrete practical steps to incorporation initiative aiming at the strengthening of the Black Sea security. And in 2019, in ministerial in Washington, and Georgia has mentioned that a very specific package has been already presented, that includes, from our perspective, from Georgia's perspective, very important trainings on the Coastal Guard and regular information exchange with the Joint Maritime Operations Center and NATO Shipping Center, and more port visits and exercises. But even more importantly, in the April of 2020, at the Foreign Ministerial have suggested an additional measures that include Georgia and Ukraine together, which includes the exercises on the strategic Black Sea region and the joint work to counter hybrid warfare, the efforts to share air traffic and radar data. So this, in all this, we see the increased interest, and we see that the activities and actions on the Baltic Sea should be also together balanced with the similar activities on the Black Sea, because with these two regions represent the important cornerstone for the stability of the Europe and Euro-Atlantic security. You have mentioned the GDRP. I think this is one of the important programs, outcomes of the memorandum that was signed on defense and security in 2016. This plan, it has 2 times already extended its plans, 3 years plans for the activities in Georgia. It has presents the trainings and exercises for the Georgian soldiers provided by the US partners, and this was directed in the territorial defense strengthening for the country like Georgia, which is something very important and new for our partnership. While we have had throughout the years a lot of cooperation in fighting together, this specific program is designed to strengthen Georgia's self-capabilities of self-defense and deterrence. Now, what I wanted also to mention about the importance towards the Black Sea security from the US perspective, what we see already is that in the first NDAA project that was presented by the US Senate, we already see in the National Defense Authorization Act, we already see focus and resources to address the changing military balance in the Black Sea region, which I think is a very important message. And we will be looking forward to cooperating, especially that the new one of the new amendments that we see also provides the language that refers to the Bucharest Summit decision and the promise of the Georgia and Ukraine membership to the NATO. I think all these components would significantly contribute to the security environment in the region and help the countries to maintain the stability and counter the alleviation that we see on the stability of the region.
Thank you, Ambassador Bakradze. And you mentioned the Bucharest Summit of 2008. That's where I would like to start my question to Ambassador Meyer. 2008, the Bucharest Summit, Romania was a big supporter, along with the United States and some other allies, for Georgia and Ukraine to fast forward the track towards integration within NATO. Then 2008, the invasion of Georgia took place. In 2014, Crimea. Fast forward today, we have the eastern flank with the tailored forward presence in the Black Sea. And so my question to you, Ambassador Meyer, is how do you see the security environment in the Black Sea at the moment? And I would like to weave in one of the audience's questions regarding specifically the tailored forward presence in NATO, and whether you think there is support among other allies for augmenting the tailored forward presence of NATO, that is, for our audience, the military presence of NATO within the Black Sea region. Ambassador Meyer?
Thank you for this question. First of all, let me just emphasize the fact that Russia relies strategically on this region to exert pressure on its neighbors, to use it as a sort of a strategic axis to increase its presence, project its power, and amplify its influence towards not only the Black Sea, but the southeastern Mediterranean. I think my colleagues have mentioned this, and this is very dangerous for the security environment in the Black Sea. That is why our philosophy in terms of the eastern flank of NATO relies on the catchphrase, one flank, one presence. So when we have this differentiation semantically between forward present and tailored forward presence, we try to emphasize the need to have an equal strategic vision in terms of NATO's capabilities on the eastern flank, and this precisely focused on the Black Sea area. We are working hard with the Pentagon in terms of increasing US military presence in Romania in all areas, land, maritime and air. This is an ongoing discussion which is going on very well, and it's very constructive based on the strategic realities on the ground. Now our focus is to consolidate NATO's forward presence on our territory with projects like the multinational Corps Headquarters Southeast, which was in fact recently approved by the Parliament, and our discussions with the American government is to have a consistent American presence at this very important military element. Also, in terms of our own initiatives, in terms of developing our military infrastructure, especially at the base at the Black Sea, Kogalniceanu base, it's a projected $3 billion investment for the coming years in terms of developing this infrastructure, which is a can be, in fact, it's a regional hub in terms of transportation of troops from Europe to Afghanistan, but can have also an amplified relevance in terms of the dynamics in the Black Sea through our cooperation with US. Also, our infrastructure at Câmpia Turzi Air Base is being developed to further increase air capabilities in terms of American presence in Romania. You mentioned very well this debate, which is not finalized in Washington regarding the US defense posture around the world. We are always giving the message that such a review of the defense posture should take into account the serious aspects related to the eastern flank of NATO and the frontiers between Europe and the East in this area. So we hope that at the end, this review of the defense posture will add in terms of deterrence and defense capabilities for countries in Central Eastern Europe, irrespective if they belong to the northern part of the eastern flank or the southern part of the eastern flank. You mentioned a country. We are in together in this respect, and we are working also hard in terms of analyzing possibilities for, again, increased military presence in order to increase deterrence and defense posture in this area. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Meyer, for your insights. I'd like to turn now to Ambassador Yelchenko, Your Excellency. When we look at the Black Sea security environment, and particularly at Ukraine, some of the questions that we're getting, and that I would like to ask you myself as well, is what can be done more from NATO and the US side to help Ukraine. More concretely, on one side, there is the issue of full navigation in the Kerch Strait. We have a question on what the US can do specifically to help Ukraine, aid Ukraine in achieving, again, full navigation of the Kerch Strait into and out of the Azov Sea. And on the other hand, anti-access area denial capabilities in Crimea that particularly Ukraine, but the whole alliance as well, is facing as a threat. Is there any possibility, do you see any possibilities, and how would that be possible to achieve anti-access area denial as well from the Western side to aid Ukraine in the security threats it faces? Ambassador Yelchenko.
Thank you for your questions. Well, first of all, I think that we should take into account, well, the good news is that after the conflict in Georgia was, as far as I think, was simply overlooked by NATO and EU in 2008, and immediately after that. The awareness was on the rise after the Crimea events. And this is the good news, that after that, NATO decided to expand its presence in the Black Sea, but it does not solve the problem which you mentioned partially in the Azov, in the Sea of Azov and the Kerch Strait, because Russia considers the Sea of Azov, well, officially as delimited between two countries, Russia and Ukraine, but unofficially they claim to control all of the Azov Sea. And here comes the issue of well, presence again. Most probably Russia will never allow any ship under the NATO flag to enter the Sea of Azov, but probably it will be much harder for them to object one of the ideas which Ukraine put forward before the European Union to create a kind of the monitoring mission of the EU with ships patrolling or monitoring the Sea of Azov and the wider area, like the Kerch Strait and the parts of the Black Sea. This idea, as far as I know, was discussed in Brussels for some time, and then I wouldn't say it was abandoned, but I think somehow it was overlooked. I think that it's time to come back to this idea. Probably the synergy between NATO and the EU may help to solve this issue. Secondly, I think the other way to raise the or to better protect the security of Ukraine and other countries in the region, I think the sanctions, much tougher and more targeted sanctions, are one of the solutions. Let me remind you about the fact, which is not frequently mentioned even in the media, that Russia, well, everybody knows that from Crimea they converted Crimean ports into the major bases of supply to Syria, of everything, not only military, but also grain, food products and other things being exported to Syria from Crimea. But the other fact, which is not mentioned as much, is that Russia is very cleverly, I think they're using the North Korea model in avoiding or getting around the existing sanctions. They're using the Crimean ports to deliver goods to the other Russian ports in the Sea of Azov, like Sochi, for example. And from there, they claim that the further export is originated. By this, they're avoiding sanctions, because every ship which exits from the Crimean port is supposed to be under sanctions, and you cannot really buy the goods which were exported from Crimea. But what they do, they transfer goods, as I said, to other ports which are not under sanctions, and continuing the trade operations from there. And of course, well, everybody mentions the bigger presence of NATO. I think it is still not enough because Russia still thinks that it can dominate in the Black Sea. That's what they did for centuries. And probably the only country which can stand against it bilaterally is Turkey. But as we don't have the Turkish colleague with us here, I don't think that we need to discuss this issue. Well, let me stop on that. And I have a question. We have a number of questions on the screen which I addressed to all of us or to me. Are we supposed to answer them right now or later?
Ambassador, I am trying to weave them into the conversation as we go. So depending on the topic, I've already asked you some of the questions and answered them live through you, actually. We'll try to get in as many questions as possible. And you touched upon one of the issues that is being asked by the audience as well, regional partnerships and regional relations and how that can help the Black Sea security environment, or on the contrary, play a less constructive role. We have a complicated relationship between Turkey and Russia, with Turkey having the keys to the gate of the Black Sea. And we have a series of still developing, but already created a network of strategic partnerships, the ones that we're talking about with the United States, but also regional partnerships, like, for instance, the new one between Georgia and Ukraine. So with that, I would like to open the discussion a little bit to, as we're wrapping up the discussion on the United States and the Black Sea, to dive a little bit into regional relationships, bilateral or multilateral. Ambassador Bagradze, how do you see this network of strategic partnerships that Georgia is trying to build, as well as Romania and Ukraine? And how do you see, on the contrary, the balance of the relationship between Russia and Turkey, and on the other hand, the complicated threat assessment that we have in the Black Sea, that makes the Black Sea so special compared to other regions, that we do not have a common threat assessment, that we have 3 NATO member states that have a different view of Russia, and we have 2 NATO partners like Georgia and Ukraine, who play a special role in balancing, despite the fact that they are not NATO member states, and that they are facing major security challenges. Could you comment on could you give us your insights on how you see these regional cooperations affecting Black Sea security?
Thank you. First of all, to have a really good overview of the regional partnership, I would recommend many to look up your yesterday's article for the emerging Europe. Yulia, it has presented a very good outlook and about that. From Georgia's perspective, definitely, I will first of all agree with Volodymyr. We are not going to discuss some issues that we don't have our close colleagues here participating, but definitely Turkey has expressed on many. We have strategic partnership with Turkey, with Azerbaijan. This trilateral partnership has led to the very important multinational projects, including providing the alternative access to the Caspian Sea basin oil and gas for Europe, alternative to the Russian route, which I think is a critical element and part of the European and Eurasian security. We have, of course, the cooperation that includes the transportation, and we have just last year launched a new railway that connects Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Turkey. When we look at the map, we see the routes connecting east and west on the Eurasian continent, and that is the Russian route, that is the Iranian route, and in the middle there is this corridor which connects Caspian and Black Sea basins, which connects the Central Asia or Japan or Asian large economies, China with the European ones, with European Union, with Turkey on the other hand, and that connectivity I think plays a critical role. And I mentioned this during this discussion because we believe that strong US foothold on this in this environment, on the Black Sea security, in the economic, energy, infrastructural projects is critically important. And this is what US's allies like Georgia is trying to promote as much as possible and trying to advance this interest in the region.
Thank you, Ambassador Bakratze. And with that, I would like to turn to Romania's ambassador, Ambassador Meyer. Romania has had developed over the last few decades a network of partnerships. It has a strategic partnership with Turkey. It has a strategic partnership with Azerbaijan in the larger Black Sea region. And it is perceived as a stability factor in the region. How do you see the security environment in the Black Sea being affected by Romania's strategic partnerships and by Romania's bilateral relations with Georgia, with Ukraine, and with Moldova?
Yeah, thank you. We have a traditional very good partnership with Georgia, since you mentioned first Georgia, which covers many areas of defense, also consultations on the security environment in the Black Sea, and even exchange of analysis regarding developments here. I think this adds to Georgia's path towards NATO also, and they know that we are supporters in terms of Georgia getting closer to the alliance. In terms of our relationship with Ukraine, it has developed positively in the last years. I think it's an important factor for the overall strategic environment in the Black Sea. We have enhanced our military cooperation, our common exercises, or discussions regarding the Black Sea. But further than this, we believe that in order to have at least a minimal common assessment of the strategic and security environment in the Black Sea, I think we need to further develop and increase situational awareness and early warning systems that relate to each countries to increase our intelligence cooperation and to try to have common assessments in respect to the sometimes very unpredictable dynamic in the Black Sea. In terms of our cooperation inside NATO with allies at the Black Sea, I must emphasize that in the last year, we have developed a good cooperation with Bulgaria in terms of raising the consciousness and awareness on the importance and the strategic importance of the Black Sea, and perhaps even inducing some common initiatives inside NATO related to the Black Sea strategy. And we have a traditional strategic partnership with Turkey. We believe that Turkey is a vital element anyway, and in terms of the entire southern flank, and also with incidents, of course, profound incidents on the Black Sea. It's a constant dialogue that we have with Turkey. We like, of course, to see Turkey more engaged in terms of NATO implication in the Black Sea. That's our message towards them all the time when we have consultations and discussions. We have this interesting triangle, Poland, Romania, Turkey, that also touches upon the eastern flank of NATO and can be further used, and we insist on that, on creating a much more critical mass in terms of NATO's presence and implication on the eastern flank. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Meyer. And with that, I would like to turn the last time, as we're running out of time, to Ambassador Yelchenko with a similar set of questions to you, Ambassador. Regional security environment and Ukraine's relations with its neighbors and with the larger Black Sea in terms of how that affects Ukraine's national security and regional security. There were questions from the audience, particularly relating to the relationship to Romania of Ukraine and the relationship of Moldova with Ukraine. But please, Ambassador, share with us your thoughts on how you see the relationships, the strategic partnerships and bilateral relationships that Ukraine has in the region for national and regional security.
I think this is a very important topic. As my Romanian colleague already said, the Ukrainian-Romanian relations are on the rise. It's not only in the military and security sphere. I think that we can do more, and there was one of the questions about that. I fully agree with that. It's not enough, but I think it's coming. Well, there's another issue on which Romania, Ukraine, plus Moldova can be very much interested, this kind of activation of our participation in the settlement of the Transnistria conflict. There is another Russian base there, not frequently mentioned recently, but it's well, like several hundreds or even more of Russian military. Whatever they say, they claim that it's outdated, that they are just securing the former military installations and a lot of ammunition, but it's not less dangerous because of that. And I think that we can do more. The so-called 5+2 group is now almost idle, and we need to do something with that. But of course, Moldova should play the leading role in that. As far as Romania is concerned, I would like to mention that even if we used to have some tensions which are in the past and behind us, like the Serpent Island, by the way, that was an excellent example of peacefully solving the very delicate and complicated issue, but it was done. And I think that one of the ideas in the military sphere, I think it was already mentioned at one of the events here in Washington before the pandemic, is that Ukraine and Romania should think of having some kind of joint, probably temporary presence or exercise on the Serpent Island to have a kind of outpost, because it's only if I correctly remember, like 70 or even 60 miles from the territory which Russia claims as theirs. So it may become another point of containment of Russian aggressive attempts. Then, of course, the issue of the merchant ships or trade in the Black Sea. I think that now, as a result of almost total blockade of the entrance to the Azov Sea, a lot of Western European companies are losing a lot of money and benefits from not being able to import anything from the Ukrainian ports in the Azov Sea. And this is, by the way, another issue for the EU. That's why I'm coming back to our idea to have a kind of monitoring mission of the EU. And generally speaking, the I think extended presence of all NATO countries is important. As far as Ukraine and Georgia are concerned, we are real partners, and we can do more, of course. But our possibilities are much smaller than the NATO members. As I said, Ukraine is only developing its Black Sea fleet, because we lost almost everything as a result of annexation of Crimea. And Georgia, to my knowledge, has even smaller fleet. And of course, we cannot stand against Russia. So we need to think of probably, creating another, I don't know, triangle or even more. I've heard about the the Polish idea. They're now starting the presidency or chairmanship in so-called Visegrad group. There were ideas some years ago to have like Visegrad plus 1, plus 2, plus 3, meaning Ukraine, Romania, possibly Georgia or Moldova. Even as the Visegrad countries do not have the direct entrance to the Black Sea, but they're interested in trade. Well, there is an idea of so-called 3 seas, where Black Sea, plays the role. The Baltic Sea was already mentioned in our discussion. So there are many things which can be solved bilaterally, trilaterally in addition to what we have in the NATO or EU framework. Unfortunately, well, another organization which should have played a much more active role is the BSEC, the Black Sea Economic Cooperation, but unfortunately nowadays everything is blocked by Russia. There, they pretend to create, or they are seeking that the BSEC should just forget about Crimea and to continue business as usual, which is of course not accepted by Ukraine and by Georgia. That's why the organization is now almost idle. But it could have played much better and active role in the trade and economic issues. There was an idea to build the highway around the Black Sea, which has its parts, in some parts of the Black Sea coast, but they are not connected. David already mentioned some economic ideas like the corridors. But again, it's all in the framework of BSEC or EU plus, and now it's almost impossible to solve anything because of the sanctions against Russia and the disruptive role of Russia in some bigger international organizations.
Thank you, Ambassador Yelchenko. And with that, we have run already out of time. I would like to thank all of our panelists, your excellencies, for your insights and for your participation, frankly, in this panel. It is an honor to me and a privilege to the Middle East Institute's new program, Frontier Europe, that looks at the Black Sea. We are excited that we have been doing this. My takeaway from this is that we will need to do it again in formats that include Turkey and Bulgaria and other actors in the Black Sea. But I think our common takeaway from this is that it has been, I hope, a very interesting discussion for our audience. Thank you to for all the questions that we have received. Apologies, we have addressed as many as we can, and the rest we should consider addressing in a next event and next format. Thank you again to everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, excellencies, for your insights, and see you soon.